Yes, I think so.
Hmm?
I think so, yeah.
Stephen? Like, up here. So we're gonna go, since you were there, we're gonna go up here and start. So we start. Maybe a good thing.
Oh, right, sorry. Okay.
Okay, members, you're hereby summoned to attend the meeting of Business and Culture Committee to be held hybrid, so remotely via WebEx and physically in the chamber in the Guildhall in Derry. We take the roll call. Alderman Cook.
Online.
Thank you. Alderman Guy. Alderman Middleton.
Here, Stephen, online.
Thank you. Councillor Raymond Barr. Councillor Duffy.
Shot.
Councillor Farrell.
Here.
Councillor Harkin. Councillor Hart. Councillor Hutton.
Sure.
Councillor McDade, I think, is giving her apologies. Councillor McHugh. Councillor Mooney.
Here.
Councillor Farrell. Councillor Neelis.
And sure.
Thank you, members.
Okay, members, you're all very welcome here to the monthly meeting of the Business and Culture Committee. I'm just going to start here by reading the broadcasting statement, what's been updated recently for the reintroduction of the hybrid meetings. So I would like to remind everyone physically present at this meeting or in attendance remotely that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. This broadcast may be terminated or suspended in accordance with our protocol. Due to your attendance at this meeting, you are consenting to being filmed and to the use and storage of those images for broadcasting or training purposes, and for the purpose of keeping historical records and making those records available to the public. Members and previous speakers are reminded to only have their mics and cameras on while speaking at the meeting and to use the chat facility to highlight a request to speak. A full copy of the Council's privacy notice may be found on the Council's website, derrystrabane.com. Okay, members, just declaration of members' interest. I'm happy to take those now or any time during the meeting as they arise. Please let it be known. Moving on for our first item today is item 5, and that is the deputation from Stephen Kelly on manufacturing NI. Stephen, you're very welcome to the chamber today, and we're looking forward to your presentation, and we're equally looking forward to your return on the 22nd of October for your second presentation. So I'll hand over to you, Stephen. You have 10 minutes for your presentation, and then after that, we will put it to the floor, what will be a further 10 minutes. So over to you, Stephen.
Thanks, Chair. It's good to be back in Council here with my day job, which is Chief Executive of Manufacturing Northern Ireland. I spotted some mistakes in the slides last night and I sent through an update. I don't know if they've made it through or not, but well, they are. That's even brilliant efficiency. Well done to everybody involved. Thank you for that. Next slide, please. So I want to start with a quick quiz. It's probably the world's simplest quiz for an audience like this. Next slide, please. And if I could ask what the connection is between all the items that are on the screen at the moment. Apart from the fact that it'll mostly along the bottom row, if you had consumed all of those things, you're probably likely to have had a great weekend. But these are all items that are invented and at the core of our industrial heritage here in Northern Ireland. Everything from the Harry Ferguson hitch, which to this day is the basis for modern agriculture, through to milk chocolate, pneumatic tires, and of course Bushmills whiskey. But these are all things that are largely invented here by people from the north and have made an enormous contribution to society across the ages. Next slide, please. And what it essentially talks to is that from our manufacturing community, problem solving is in our DNA. They spot issues that are impacting on society here and across the globe, and they fire their ingenuity and their innovation at solving what those problems are. Next slide, please. And it's because of this that our manufacturing community continues to be a bigger contributor to the Northern Ireland economy than it is to the rest of the UK's economy. And you can see those two lines are diverging. With the red line at the bottom is the UK. It's in steady decline. But the yellow line at the top is our manufacturing community across the north that has seen not just sustaining its economic contribution, but continuing to increase that contribution. Next slide, please. And what it's meant is that despite reports of its demise, actually there's 21% more people employed in manufacturing today than there were in 2010. Certainly it means that our manufacturing community has changed. In the past, it would have been synonymous perhaps with very large shipyards. In this city, synonymous with the shirt industry and the textiles industry. But our manufacturing community has changed and decided to grow across all their sectors. Next slide, please. And the good reason for this is that these are well-paid, sustainable jobs in places that people wish to call home and set up and contribute to their local community, to join their local clubs and societies, to send their children to the same schools that they've gone to ensure that they're making a contribution to the community where they're from. Excuse me, next slide, please. Hopefully this voice lasts, because that's the only thing I have. My good looks won't get me through life. The voice is kind of important, and hopefully it sticks with us. But it's not just our industrial heritage, which is important. It's actually our future and our present as well. So whilst we're a people of about 1.9 million, we actually feed 10 million people. And if I take that into a more local level, you just need to look at McColgan's and Strabane, where 40% of all the sausage rolls on the island that are consumed are made out of that factory in Strabane. And we're also brilliant at stadia. So the soccer fans in the room will recognise this as the best football stadium with the best football club apart from Derry City in the world, which is the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. That's 9,757 unique pieces of precast concrete made from concrete and tomb forming the main stadium body. The structural steel in the roof is from Smiths in Garva. The silver ring around the inside is Hassans in Kilray. That entire stadium was built here in Northern Ireland and transported across to London, which is not just my view, but it's been voted the best stadia in the world. So we're capable of very big, large projects and delivering those to difficult locations. Next slide, please. And we continue to dominate certain sectors. So this is our mobile crushing and screening engineering sector, largely grown out of the South Tyrone, Mid-Ulster area, but it's extended right up into the Derry Strabane area as well. So this particular machine is a Terex machine, which is made here in Campsie. And that industry and that sector that we've created here dominates the global trade in those types of machinery. So 40% of all the machines in the world are made here in the west of Northern Ireland. And they've moved the technology into not just dealing with those minerals and materials that come out of the ground, but actually developing recycling machines, getting best value, and particularly now we live in a more circular economy world. Next slide, please. We dominate in terms of aerospace, so 30% of the world's premium economy business and first-class seats are all made essentially out of two factories here in the north, one in Kilkeel, one in Portadown. Next, please. And the supply chain for that business actually extends right across Northern Ireland, including suppliers here in the Derry Strabane area. Well-known, well-articulated story, but Seagate Technologies, 25% of all the electronic devices in the world have a little piece of Derry in it, made through Seagate Technology down in Springtown. And in fact, they've just invented a new technology called Hammer, and Hammer is actually changing the world of data storage. And the facilities in Springtown are starting to develop that for customers now right across the globe. Next slide, please. We're involved in data health and data analytics. So Randox Health, again, with a presence here in the Northwest and in Donegal. They produce, just in one test alone, their cholesterol test, 4 billion tests. What it means is that 5% of the entire population of the world every year has a test that's made in Northern Ireland just on that cholesterol issue, but they've tests right across a multitude of markers. Next slide, please. And in an increasingly decarbonised world where in the past we had large carbon emitting generators pushing out electricity down the one direction, out from the generator, out into consumers. But in a net zero world, there's multiple tens of thousands of generators in everybody's homes, in businesses, in small-scale renewables right across the country. So that power needs to move in multiple directions at the same time. And with businesses here trying to ensure that that net zero grid never fails. It sounds like an easy thing to say, but it's an incredibly complex problem to resolve. Next slide, please. And we're dominating in terms of net zero travel, not just on the land in terms of Wrightbus, and we've seen their big order today, again with suppliers here in the Derry Strabane area. But we're also taking that net zero travel onto water as well. Next slide, please. And this is lastly, just in terms of demonstrations, two of my most favourite businesses. The first one here is a partnership between Block of Mahara Felt and Fast Technologies based down in Skeg. They've come together to actually create a factory in a box. So rather than actually going and building their own factories in all their locations, they're actually designing what they call a digital twin factories here at the Science Park. Those factories are then being constructed in places like San Antonio in Texas, where they've just opened up. They're producing 4 times as much product that they do here in Northern Ireland, but with 25% of the staff, because they've largely automated those facilities. That entire factory is actually being run in San Antonio in Texas from here in the city itself. electronically. Next slide, please. And probably my most favourite business, which is based in Glack, which is halfway between Greysteel and Ballykelly, out in the middle of nowhere in some respects. But this is a business born by three brothers with their mother, who used to work in Altnagelvin in intensive care. And they've actually invented and are selling seats in recuperation, which in a US context saves the recovery time of patients about $25,000 each. The best quality seats that are available in terms of healthcare. Next slide, please. So what all of that means in context is that manufacturing continues to be the third largest subsector of employment after retail and after our health services. So they're just short of 100,000 people directly employed. But in addition to that, there's actually now just about 150,000 people who are wholly dependent upon our manufacturing sector for their wage. That's people in the supply chain and people in the induced economy. So what that induced economy is the people's wages are used to spend in retail and hospitality and other parts of our economy, 100% reliance on it. So it means that 1 in 4 families, not just here right across the north, but here in the Derry Strabane area, that rely upon a manufacturing wage this Friday. Next slide, please. And that's because, unlike other parts of the economy, manufacturing has a much larger multiplier. So on average, there's about 1.74 jobs in engineering over and above the actual direct job in engineering. And from a GVA perspective, it's an additional £1.80 for every pounds of value that's actually created directly by our manufacturers. The reach that manufacturing has goes much further than other parts of the economy. Next slide, please. And to give you some numbers on that, that means that about 251, nearly 252,000 people are wholly reliant on that manufacturing wage, and we're generating just short of £16 billion worth of GVA in 2022 numbers. Next slide, please. And the better news about all of that is that the stuff that we make here is largely sold outside of here. We are making things that are consumed by people locally, but this is good, hard, clean cash that's been brought in from customers elsewhere in the UK and across the globe. The vast majority of what we sell actually sells externally. About 90% of our manufacturers have a customer outside of Northern Ireland, almost 90% of a customer outside of the UK. Next slide, please. And it dominates our exports. More than half of all the things that we sell as exports from the Northern Ireland economy is the stuff that we make with our hands and businesses across this council area and across the north. Next slide, please. And when you look at specifically down into individual council areas, and this is work that we've just recently completed, it is yet to be published, you're getting a sneak preview of it, but we've actually gone and divided our manufacturing economy down into each one of the 11 district council areas. And when we look at Derry and Strabane council area, it's about 8% of the GVA of this area is a direct contribution from our manufacturing community. Now you multiply that by 1.8 and you add the 8%, the one on again, you can begin to see that we're approaching a quarter of the economy in the Derry Strabane area continues to be from our manufacturing community. So despite all our fears of its demise, it's actually quite a strong and incredibly important part of the Derry Strabane economy. Next slide, please. And it's not just that we're good at selling stuff, and sometimes you have input costs as well, but actually we completely dominate our net trade balances. So when you subtract from our sales away all the costs associated in terms of supply chain, in terms of running your operations, in terms of wages, we're bringing in a clean £3 billion profit to the Northern Ireland economy. Next slide, please. And again, delving into the numbers specifically for Derry Strabane, I'm conscious that there's lots of detail on these slides, which you can read at your own leisure. But you can see that Derry and Strabane is actually performing particularly well in some sectors. So it leads the way in some subsectors of manufacturing, does incredibly well in terms of textiles, does really well in terms of some other areas, but it actually is underrepresented, particularly in and around those engineering sectors. So when you look as a council at what your economic plan should be and where the opportunities exist, then you begin to see that some of this data becomes relevant in terms of your economic plan. Next slide, please. And when we look at direct jobs, so the Derry Strabane area is about 7.2% of direct employment, just over 6,300 people directly employed in our manufacturing community. Again, multiply that by 1.7, you can see the total contribution in terms of the manufacturing to the employment in this area. Next slide, please. But it slightly lags behind elsewhere in the north. So when you look at this location quotient, one is we're on the average, and you can see Derry Strabane is one of about 5-6 council areas where manufacturing is underrepresented and where an opportunity exists. So it's marginally underrepresented at 0.94 versus the average being 1. Next slide, please. But as we've known, and it's the reason why the US is trying to get American manufacturing jobs back, it's the reason why the German, Chinese economies continue to be strong, it's the reason why the UK economy is becoming weaker, is that it's turned its back to manufacturing, but those stronger economies actually turning their face towards manufacturing and trying to bring those jobs either back or grow the manufacturing community. And the work that we've done by Oxford Economics shows that those economies where manufacturing grows, the entire economy grows with it. Next slide, please.
Sorry to interrupt, Stephen. We're just over the time. I'll give you another minute.
No problem.
Just
Trying to
to
rattle
go
through
the
them
rest,
for you.
because there was not much more left.
Yeah.
And it's so important as well. So I don't want to, but I'll stop there. Thank you.
Next slide, please. Obviously, our dual market, and the next slide, the dual market access is something that is directed towards essentially 2 parts of our economy. One being the things that we make through our manufacturing communities, and second is our distribution opportunity. Next slide. And the one after. The one after, yeah. And that dual market access proves, and particularly here as a border community, that we need to grasp that opportunity. And I was in a meeting in Belfast before now just on doing just that. But what it's essentially meant is that this is actually one of the most attractive places on these islands and across Europe on which to settle and grow a manufacturing business. Next slide, please. What we need to change in our manufacturing community is our economy minister talks about good jobs that are regionally dispersed, that are both productive but also decarbonised. And that's a big challenge for our manufacturers, particularly as they're some of the largest energy users. But the pressure is coming on from consumers, it's coming on from our customers, and manufacturers are beginning to do that, are beginning that process of decarbonisation. And that provides an opportunity, particularly for this part of the Northwest, because we're moving it from just that simple defensive play into looking at new sectors, new opportunities, and aligning those with the education provision that we have in the Northwest. Next, please. There's a problem with people across the North. Next slide. We've lost quite a number of people over the years, but more particularly, actually, on average, about 80,000 people net new each decade came into our workforce. In the current decade, that's less than 2,000. So net new for every year in the current decade, we have about 200 new people, which means that we need to direct ourselves towards more automation and robotics and improving the jobs for the people that we have here. Next slide. So these are great businesses selling lots externally, making a huge economic contribution, but we do have a radical alignment underway. Next slide. And specifically for here, the Derry Strabane area continues to be the 3rd largest employer after our retail sector and our health services. These are good, regionally dispersed, productive jobs, but we need to develop more in terms of that decarbonisation. Derry Strabane area is performing reasonably well, but can do better, particularly in some areas that are underserved in terms of subsectors like our engineering sector. But with the development of our regional college, with the development of our university, Derry Strabane is uniquely placed in order to capture that opportunity. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, Stephen, for that in-depth presentation. A lot of good stats and stuff on there. As you say, there could be a lot more being done as well. So now what we're going to do, we're going to open it up to the floor. So our members here will have, if they have any questions, they'll come to you with them. Okay. The first indicated speaker I have is Grace, followed by Julie.
Garmagad Alex, Garmagad Stephen, thank you for the presentation. I just want to ask a wee quick question first and then we'll maybe come back for more comments. Mid-Ulster obviously is really high, seems to be like a real, an area of massive growth and continued growth. Can you just explain to me a couple of the differences between our council area and theirs and what they're doing differently?
Stephen, do you want to take questions now and then answer them, or would you want to go back and forth? It's up to you.
Do you want to take a number of questions?
Yeah, we'll take a number of questions first. So thank you for that, Councillor Natus. Alderman Middleton.
Thanks, Chair, for letting me in. Thankfully, it's not so much questions as a short comment. So thank you, Stephen, on behalf of the DEP for a really, really positive and informative presentation. It's great to be in the chamber or online and actually hear positive statistics relating to our district. And it's great also to see if there's work to be done where we can do it specifically. It's lovely to hear how Northern Ireland is performing in the manufacturing world and the positive impact it has on our economy. We are all so thankful for our workers in manufacturing district-wide, particularly for me, one of many, but one amazing local manufacturing company is Fleming's Agricultural, which is based in New Buildings. So Fleming's Agriculture do excellent work locally, exporting their products globally, which I find really exciting. They're doing great work with young people and training, improving our local skill base. And I think that's just really key for maybe all our manufacturing companies. Fleming's Agriculture serve as an example of how we can grow our economy further going forward. So thanks again. And if I'm coming across excited, it's because I found your presentation really exciting. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Alderman Middleton. Next speaker is Aislinn, Councillor Hutton.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Stephen, for the presentation. It's great to see the statistics that's on the presentation and the progress that we are making, and comparing it with other council areas where there is that wee bit of learning. But I wanted to just chat about the apprenticeship opportunities within the industry. Obviously, the industry requires skills in order to keep going and to sustain it. So I just wanted to ask about those opportunities that are available to our young people. Not only is it beneficial to the manufacturing organisations, but for the young people that don't want to choose that university pathway and what's available out there. And if we can be improving upon that and seeing where that sits. So thank you. I look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you, Councillor Hutton. Councillor Farrell.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to Stephen for coming today. And I'm probably going to echo the remarks of Alderman Middleton because I found the presentation really informative, probably the most informative presentation I've witnessed in a while, because you had so many facts that realistically I didn't know before about being global leaders in so many sort of sectors. So that's really, really encouraging. It's really, really positive. And I note, I don't have a question really. It's just a comment. It's just the potential that is on the horizon that's going to be provided through the innovation projects at Magee. Might be something you know about. Through City Deal, specifically around advanced manufacturing, robotics, data analytics, personalized medicine. These are the future. And if we can nail that, we're going to have so many graduates coming here that are leaving Magee with skills. And we hope that they settle here, they create businesses, which brings future investment, improves employment opportunities for everybody in the city and district. So what's happening at the minute is good, but the future is bright. If Magee funding is delivered, if we're doing the right sort of engineering courses, and that City Deal is delivered as expected. So thanks for coming. No real questions, but that's where the opportunities lie, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Farrell. One last speaker at the moment, and then we'll give Stephen, the opportunity to respond in case we overload you. All right. Councillor Hargan.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Stephen, for coming in today and providing such a detailed report. And obviously, manufacturing sector is very, very important to any economy. We need to create things and we need to build. You know, we would like to see more manufacturing jobs in Derry, and it's good that there's a growth in them. And I suppose I have 3 questions or points, and you can, you know, speak as much as you feel you can on them. One is just, obviously, you were saying much of it is done for export, and I don't know if I'm sure you're familiar with the Going for Growth strategy that we had for agriculture, that the Alliance Minister is now saying was a failure and shouldn't have existed. And obviously that was very much geared for global exports and was praised for many, many years. But now we're seeing the ramifications of a disastrous policy in terms of the state of Loch Ness, and the kind of lack of regulation around you know, what can be dumped into our rivers and waterways. And so I think in terms of the future manufacturing here, you've talked a bit about decarbonisation. But I think, look, what I want to know is if you feel confident that the growth of manufacturing here in our district and across the north will align very much to what we have placed as a council around the climate emergency, and the kind of aspirations that we have for that, because you know, there can be greenwashing in all sorts of industries. So I'm just curious what you think. The second is obviously in your report you talked a lot about the manufacturing wage, and we've also had a historic victory here in Derry for Seagate workers, and Seagate obviously for many years was the centrepiece in terms of a manufacturing company in Derry, who maybe at the start when they first arrived here had higher than average pay, but that declined over many, many years to the point where a Seagate worker was able to see that they were being paid less than workers in Tesco or elsewhere. And that led them on to the campaign for trade union that was obviously aggressively opposed by the company. So I want to know if manufacturing NI backs workers' right to join a trade union, as this council does, because I think that that's going to be very important, not just to securing more manufacturing jobs, but to actually seeing people's income improve to deal with many of the indicators in the district that we're trying to move away from. And then the last one that I think is important, which is you know, that we have recently had a commitment from the Minister for Economy that while he's been on trips to the United States and while companies have been coming here, we're not seeking investment into our district area from arms companies. And I think given what's happening in the world right now, that I don't think we would like to see in our council also has it in its corporate policy where we don't want to see organisations here that are complicit in genocide, that are assisting in any way with apartheid. And I know that campaigners are looking at some organisations right now and their ties. So I just want to get, if you can say what manufacturing NI's view on that, if they have a ethical policy around what type of companies we would like to see being here. Thank you.
Okay, folks, we'll give Stephen the opportunity to respond to some of those, and then we'll take it back to the floor for a few more.
Thanks. I'll maybe start at the beginning, work my way around. The kind of noticeable difference between the Northwest and Mid-Ulster. The first one is, I always remember one of the past chairs of my organisation, Patsy Forbes, who by chance was the fastest man in the world over 100 and 200 metres, over 80 years of age. And to this day can still outrun me. But when I asked Patsy why he set up his business in Ardbow, he says, set it up because the people there needed jobs. and the government weren't going to come and set them up for them, weren't going to come and create them for them. So there's a kind of cultural piece there about entrepreneurship, a cultural piece about actually accepting that, or not accepting, but recognising that the government wasn't going to come and build big factories, government jobs, infrastructure, universities, etc., etc., etc. So they felt that they needed to get on with it themselves. And at the centre of that development was the creation of the first mobile crushing and screening plant. And from there, the leaders of that business developed many other leaders who've gone on and created their own businesses just in the same like. So they understood the engineering excellence that was required. They also knew how to sell, and they knew how to sell externally. So that entire mobile crushing and screening industry, which has moved now into recycled material, recycled machinery, etc., 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 has all been homegrown and not caused by the government. Now, the government's leaned in and assisted them in terms of their export growth in particular, and they'd be very appreciative of that. Excuse me. But it is a cultural piece about needing to do it for themselves. In terms of some other local manufacturers, absolutely. Fleming Agricultural is a really good example of an incredibly successful local business, second, maybe third generation, in fact. And the extraordinary thing there is that they've built their success on their quality. So every single competitor that they have in the world, their product passes by their territory to get to customers. So they're selling stuff from new buildings today that's going to New Zealand. And to get from new buildings to New Zealand takes quite a while. And it passes every single one of their competitors in Europe, in the Middle East, and the Far East in order to get to that New Zealand market. So they've been focused on understanding their local market, absolutely, but they've been really focused on driving their quality so that the customer chooses them because they know it's the best product that's available on the marketplace. Question about apprenticeship opportunities. Absolutely. We have an extraordinary opportunity in this city in particular, and that'll be extended to Strabane when the city deal investment in the college hits the ground. But if you leave here and you work your way to Springtown, you'll be able to pass through an extraordinary educational corridor where you can arrive with zero skills at our regional college. You could pass on through in terms of getting high-level skills at our university, and there's a training centre at the far end of that for those practical skills as well. No other place in the north has that opportunity, and that's one of the reasons why we need to grasp the opportunity now to expand on the McGee campus of Ulster University. But we need to respect and appreciate actually the quality of what we have there. We need more people choosing apprenticeship routes and not just simply choosing university routes. You can end up with a PhD, having arrived on the Strand Road with zero qualifications. You could end up with a PhD within a mile of where you've begun your study. But in addition to that, the university opportunity is changing as well. So we have an incredibly positive degree apprenticeship scheme at Ulster University in McGee, run by the Mega Mid-Ulster Group. That was in engineering to begin with, but it's extended now into accountancy as well. There's 27 places available this year, but they have nearly 100 applications for those degree apprentices to start in the current year. If they had more companies offering that degree apprenticeship place, more of those 100 people would begin. But in addition to that, we've incredible programs in engineering and renewables, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And what's unique about the offer here is they will align physical engineering with electronic engineering. They'll align what skills are required for a modern economy, not just simply one specific study area. The innovation projects at City Deal are absolutely critically important and game-changing. The world is moving to a much more automated, innovative space. The Cadric project in particular, which is aligning those skills or those research elements in and around robotics, is attracting people to the city. There are businesses here who do what they do, engineering firms in particular, who are looking at that project and trying to connect with it in a way that means that the next iteration of what they've actually created will meet market and global demands. We also have the Smart Manufacturing Data Hub based at Ulster University's campus, which is about taking all the available data to drive productivity in terms of the resources that we have within our business. And that's a £50 million project that's headquartered, as I say, at McGee. But those robotics elements, those data elements that are aligning together gives Derry and Strabane a unique opportunity that we really need to grasp, and that will become real once we begin to see those buildings taking shape on the Strand Road and between the Strand Road and the Northland Road. Going for growth, we don't have a manufacturing strategy. So unlike other parts of the economy where we have a tourism strategy, where we have an agricultural plan, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, there's never been a manufacturing strategy. And that's a failure. That's something that needs to be arrested in terms of the future development. In many ways, the development of our manufacturing economy has come because we don't have the strategy. The businesses themselves, by necessity, have had to get on with this. They are running at the climate emergency. As I said in the presentation, it's not just a defensive play here. They're actually seeing that as an opportunity. So what are the skills, particularly in and around engineering, that we have in abundance in this part of the world that we can actually fire at that climate emergency piece? So they're seeing this as a means to create new technologies, create new business, not just to meet our local expectations with the Climate Change Act here in Northern Ireland, but across the globe as well. Workers' rights. My organisation was born in this city 21 years ago, and it began with a threat to apply business rates onto manufacturing properties that didn't exist up until 2003. Two local manufacturers, seen a little ad in the journal. Those two manufacturers spoke to another two, who spoke to four, who spoke to eight. And from there, a campaign was born. And alongside all of that was the trade union movement. So what we had was an alignment of the factory owners and the factory workers, and that's continued to this day. So if you talk to people in Unite, GMB and others, they recognise that Manufacturing NI works hand in glove with them. We agree on probably 90% of things. The 10% of things, nobody agrees on 100% of everything. 90% of things we actually agree on. So we work very closely with them. In fact, the trade union movement were pivotal in terms of securing industrial derating as part of that process. We're not in the investment space. We're not part of the strategy in terms of attracting external investment. We will support it. We'll talk about the opportunities that exist here, the great skills that are available, and the ingenuity of our people and the industrious nature of our people. But when you ask the question around ethical investments, et cetera, those are questions for Stormont rather than for us. We're not the government. We represent the businesses that are here right now. So that's a question really for Conor Murphy and for the executive rather than us, Chair.
Thank you very much for that, Stephen. So we have two more speakers. I would ask if anything that wasn't covered. Yeah, happy enough. The other indicated speaker was Alderman Guy. Was it already covered?
Well, thanks, Chair. I'm just going to say that just to thank Stephen for coming on to present. We've heard that much in the media and so on about how Northern Ireland isn't doing well, and it's nice to come in here and hear the positivity from your presentation. I was just going to talk about skill sets, but Stephen has answered everything, so I'm grand with that, Chair. Thank you. Thanks, Stephen.
Thank you, Alderman Guy. Alderman Quett.
Thank you, Chair. I'm very Hussey.
Alderman Hussey, sorry, Alderman Hussey. I don't know what happened then.
Don't worry, Alec. Stephen, the issue of clustering of manufacturing vis-a-vis diversity and being a rural country, you'll understand where I'm coming from that. You've rightly pointed out, that the skills can develop in a very small way and grow. Donald Ellis would be a prime example. A couple of fields over myself was where that business started. Look where it's at now. Part of the rationale for that was that planning wasn't able to allow them to develop where they were rurally. And they still have a base where they originated, but that whole idea of ensuring that the rural community can benefit in situ from the expansion of the manufacturing industry. Have you any comment on that? And I'm particularly mindful, I'm sure a lot of your remarks were probably oriented more towards the former Derry City Council area, well, we'll see, vis-a-vis the former Strabane Council area. And somebody has already commented, I mean, the manufacturing hub of Mid-Ulster vis-a-vis what we have, and have we the potential to become the equivalent of Mid-Ulster in the west? And the final point is one of the issues within the green economy, where the power is being generated at the moment, green energy. A lot of it is here, but the capacity to actually move that power eastwards is not. So why not utilise the power where it's actually at? Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Alderman Hussey. Stephen, do you want to respond to any of them?
Yeah, I will do, Chair.
Just quickly, over time, thank you.
I think it was just as you were arriving in, but I talked about our manufacturing community tends not to be in our cities, and it's actually at the backbone of our rural economy. Take Mid-Ulster as an example. More than 50% of the jobs, of all the jobs in Mid-Ulster, are either directly, indirectly, or induced as part of the manufacturing community. Our manufacturers tend to be down farm lanes. Some of the most extraordinary businesses that I know are on roads that people would never travel on through choice, but they're there because that's where they're from and they want to contribute to that local community. There is an issue on planning, there's no doubt about that. There's obviously the rural issue that you just referenced there, but also even just in the city basis. I can just recall driving around the city itself, and there's lots of what was formerly industrial space that has been moved out from industrial space into other forms of commercial development, retail, warehousing, etc., etc., etc. And indeed housing for that matter. Why? Because the developer buys it and there's greater value with those other industries than there would be in terms of continuing as an industrial space. But in a world where we have this dual market access opportunity, where we have the skills and ingenuity to actually meet some of the modern challenges of a modern world, when we do have the Northwest beginning to be on the rise, and I think we're in a little kind of positive moment in the last number of months, then releasing that land for other commercial opportunities or housing opportunities, I think is a mistake. And as a council, I think we just need to be careful about permitting or rezoning some of those elements. You're absolutely correct. I could sit and talk here for 5 hours on energy. And we're all over that energy piece because we're some of the largest energy users in the north. But you're correct. We're developing all the best wind on these islands is here in the west and the northwest in particular. It's great that we get a bit of a rates income from that, but the power all goes east. Not all, but largely goes east. And it's much better being used in situ and in this location. I would much prefer that to happen. Apart from anything else, it saves hundreds of millions of pounds in terms of network reinforcements that would be required. So I think there's an opportunity here for us. The presentation pointed to a number of subsectors of manufacturing, which I think this council area could turn its attention to, given the availability of labour, given the types of businesses that are already existing here and the growth potential from those, given that connection through to the City Deal projects that are about to go live, and the unique educational opportunity that exists both in Strabane to come ahead, but also in terms of that education and corridor and learning corridor between here and Springtown. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, and thank you, Stephen, and thank you to all the members for your questions and comments. I'm sure Stephen appreciates them. On behalf of the committee, I would like to thank you for being here today. It's been a very informative, coming up to an hour. It's been great, and we look forward to seeing you again the next time. Okay, so a second.
Thank you.
Okay, members, we're going to move on to chairperson's business. I'm just going to go through them in the order that I received them. First of all, over to Councillor Hart.
Thanks, Chair. On behalf of Sinn Féin and myself, I would like to offer our condolences to the family, friends and partner Chloe of Kyle McDermott, who tragically lost his life in the early hours of Monday morning. I understand that he is a relation of Councillor Jason Barr, so maybe it would be appropriate to have a minute silent in respect of Kyle. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Hart. We're just going to have a moment's silence here, folks. Okay, thank you, members. On behalf of the committee, just want to reiterate what you said there. We send our condolences to the family. Councillor Wed.
I'd just like to be associated with Councillor Hart's comments there and offer my condolences to the McDermott McGonigal families. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Barr. Councillor Guy, Alderman Guy.
Thank you, Chair. And just to associate the Ulster Unionist Party too with the comments of Councillor Hart and condolences to Councillor Barr and the wider family circle. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Alderman Guy. Councillor Minnie.
Thank you, Chair. Again, just to associate the SDLP with the comments from the Chamber, from everybody. Obviously, it's a terrible, sad loss for the family and the circumstances in which it arose. Anyway, so our condolences and thoughts to the family. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Minnie, and again, thoughts and prayers are with everyone affected. May he rest in peace. Moving on to the next item, Chairperson's business is Darren Guy.
Thank you, Chair. I have no love of poker machines. I've seen people waste a day's wages on them. The people blowing their life savings on them. And with the addiction issues in our city and district, there should be much tighter controls on them. However, the incident which happened outside the Oasis premises on Shipkey Street on Friday evening quite rightly has been declared a hate crime by the PSNI. Actions like this are wrong, unjustified, and cause great stress and anxiety amongst the employees. This incident, just like others that have happened throughout the years, and we've heard just what Stephen there earlier about manufacturing and mentioned there about companies in the US willing to come here and set up if we can get the right skill sets. Things like this put companies off. Certain companies have blacklisted this area from America because of things that have happened in the past. And I believe that, you know, we'll miss out again on well-paid jobs and as we continue to be the most deprived council area in the entire UK. The staff are constantly verbally abused by people entering the premises, or when standing outside, they have a smoke, passersby shout out the car window, Jew lover or Jew loving bastard, excuse my language there. And many see this as acceptable. It's not, it's degrading, but at least they're getting up each day and earning a living. These actions need called out by all parties, and the intimidation of the staff needs to stop. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, just before we move on that, apologies to Alderman Middleton. I've just seen your message there in the chat again. Would you like to come on now on that just before we move on? And apologies again.
No problem, Chair. Thank you. I had read earlier as well, I wanted to come in for Councillor Hart. So just on behalf of the DUP, we would also very much wish to be associated with the comments of condolence to Kyle's family, friends, our colleague Jason and the wider community on this terrible event that's happened. But also just on this this chairperson's business that Alderman Guy has brought up. The DUP would very much like to be associated with these comments, and I agree with Alderman Guy that we should all be calling out this despicable behaviour. What happened the other night was a hate crime, and the appalling actions that are continuing to happen are absolutely not welcome. And, you know, as I said, they're just appalling. So thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Middleton, and apologies again for missing you there. Our next speaker is Councillor Harkin.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I did see that on the front page that Oasis was painted red. And if there wasn't a genocide happening in Gaza, I doubt that it would have been painted red. If there hadn't been over a year, 50,000 people slaughtered, including tens of thousands of children slaughtered, I doubt that that would have happened. And I think it is tells us so much that we're told that this is a hate crime by parties that have went over and stood with the genocide supporters who are, one and the same with the Friends of Israel. The world is holding Israel to account. Governments won't do it. And I think anybody that wants to have something to say about people taking action, I think first of all they have to, if they're not actually criticising what Israel is doing, if they're not criticising what the US government is doing, if they're not criticising what the British government is doing in relation to what's happening in Gaza and Palestine, and now we see an invasion of Lebanon, and we see Israel threatening a regional war that will endanger all of us. I think that this is the issue. So I don't agree with the way in which it's been described by Alderman Barr or Alderman Middleton. I think it's interesting too that we're discussing workers' rights. Do the workers there have a trade union? Does anybody here know how much they're paid? Does anybody know how they're treated by the employer? And I think that this is absolutely unfair. I haven't heard stories of people being shouted at with anti-Semitic remarks. If that's the case, that's wrong. I think that whoever is doing that, it's misplaced. But I think that once again, whenever anyone takes action around Palestine, whenever anyone tries to doubt that there is a genocide happening, we hear this accusation of anti-Semitism, which has been completely rejected across the world. People just don't buy that anymore, that this is about anti-Semitism. What's happening is because there are children being slaughtered. There is a state that has been allowed to get away with a genocide, human rights abuses, war crimes live on TV that is now spreading a war right across the region. That's the problem. If that wasn't happening, I'm sure that Oasis wouldn't be getting painted red. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Harkin. I'm not seeing any more indicated speakers on this item, so we're going to move on. Next item is Councillor Hutton.
Thank you, Chair. And it was just to come in to acknowledge some of the good news stories that have been reaching us through social media and the TV and the news and that, and to welcome the signing of the city deal, which we all had attended, and it was a great, great success. We've also had the McGee Task Force report. We've had the DFE Sub-Regional Economic Plan. We've had news in relation to the funding of the airport and the upgrading of the A5. So it's not to go into depth in any of them, because I'm sure everybody has been reading up on them and has received some of the reports and the plans through their emails. But it's just to point out how things are moving forward. And I think that it's really encouraging, and I hope that it pushes us all to keep working hard and keep working together and building this place to be the best it can be for every single citizen that we represent. So it was just to point that out. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Hutton. Alderman Middleton.
No, Chair, that's just from earlier. Thank you.
Okay, apologies, Alderman Middleton. No indicated speakers on that, folks, and I concur with my colleague, Councillor Hutton, on that. A good news story, and long may continue, and more investment in the area. Moving on to the next item on Chairperson's business is Councillor Farrell.
Thanks, Chair. And Aisling had referenced something that I wanted to discuss, and it's about the recently announced sub-regional economic plan. I listened to the Minister's statement in the Assembly. I've read the document that's been published. I've watched the committee in Stormont where officials from DFE and Invest NI have given an outline of what happens next. The document that's been produced is welcome. That's the first thing I would say. We understand in this city, in the Northwest, that there's a major imbalance in our economy. The East is thriving, the West isn't. So I welcome the intervention from the Minister. I welcome the intervention from Invest NI that they're going to change structurally. The document that has been produced has some facts and figures on this council area. We have the lowest household income across the North. We have the lowest percentage of people earning the real living wage across the North. We've got the highest unemployment figures. We've got the highest economic and activity figures. So I hope that the interventions announced by Invest NI and the department reap benefits for people across this city and district. And the key one for us is the target about Invest NI funding and the percentage that goes to places outside of Belfast. Last year, this council area got just short of £3.2 million in assistance from Invest NI. Belfast City Council, or businesses based in Belfast City Council, got just shy of £30 million. That's 10 times the funding that was given to businesses based in this council area. So we're keen to see movement. We're keen to see change within Invest NI. We're keen to see targets in place for Invest NI. And I note in the document, it says that between October and December, there's going to be engagement with councils to formulate a plan. So I've got a question about the nature of that engagement. Is that going to be discussions with council officials, council officers, or are Invest NI and are the Department for the Economy going to come before this committee? Because Invest NI usually attend on an annual basis and we haven't seen them in quite a while. So has there been any formal communication from DFE or Invest NI about the way forward, and what's the nature of that engagement? Thank you. But it's good news, and I have no problem saying that.
Thank you, Councillor Farrell. Just going to hand over to Stephen there. He's going to answer that best I can.
Happy to answer that, Chair. At this stage, we have received correspondence inviting council officials to a co-design process that takes place next Tuesday. My intention is to go to that. Myself and Kevin will go down to get more information clearly from DFE officials and from Invest NI officials to find out what the process. I imagine this is the start of a process, not the kind of start and end. But whatever happens next Tuesday, to prepare a paper and bring that back to elected members for the following month, possibly either this committee or GSP, to talk to John and see which is the right place for it. Equally, in terms of inviting Invest NI down, you can understand at this stage they've always been very busy doing a lot of this work, but it's no problem now extending an invite to Invest NI to come down. But members might want to wait and consider what the paper and what I bring forward before that invite is considered. But they're not an emergency. They can be two separate, as far as I can see. That it's very welcome when Invest NI come down. Clearly, it's a different story than where they were before, and so that can happen. But equally, we will bring forward information now to elected members next month what this co-design process worked out and the direction of travel. And my understanding is it's quite quick. So we're looking for action plans, etc., very quickly, through this process. So,
you want to come back in again there? Go ahead.
briefly, Chair. Thank you for the update, Stephen. I think it's good that yourself and Kevin are going to engage pretty quickly. And I think it would be good that we get an update at the next available committee. I don't think we should invest any just yet. I think it's probably an idea to have those sort of interim discussions before the attended committee. But thank you very much.
Thank you. First, the next speaker on that would be Councillor Harkin.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Councillor Farrell, for raising this. And look, I think that the publication of a document that acknowledges regional imbalance, regional inequality is very, very important, because I feel like that validates what this council has been saying and the city has been saying for decades, and other areas across the north that are suffer from a lack of investment as well. So I think it's to be welcomed. I think that there's a lot of work to do between the publication of a document and then actual specific plans that will meet the ambitions of what this council is attempting to do. So I look forward to that. I've raised obviously my criticisms, which are ongoing, of InvestNI in terms of a organisation and its economic philosophy and model in terms of going forward. But what I thought was very important in the document, and I want to just underline it, is that the document states very clearly that it's only going to pursue employment and investment where the real for jobs above the real living wage with good contractual conditions, which I think is very important that that's in there as well, because that's something obviously that this council has been arguing for, and it's also something that the trade union movement has been demanding for a long time. So I very much welcome the fact that that is in there, and I think that that's a good starting place for moving the discussions forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harkin. Alderman Middleton.
Thanks, Chair, for letting me in, and thank you also to Councillor Farrell for bringing this forward. The DUP welcome the Executives Committee to Regional Imbalance, and just today the Communities Minister has announced 270 new jobs for Londonderry, so I think that's a really good news story and something that we can all be happy about. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Middleton. So that concludes Chairperson's business, unless I've left anybody out. Councillor Harkin, you did not give me enough time. You gave me literally 3 hours, so I won't be accepting it, unfortunately. Please, just a reminder for everybody, 24 hours notice, and that also includes my own party as well. Just moving on, folks, we're going to take us to our matters arising from the previous meetings. Previous meeting held on Tuesday, the 10th of September. Have we any matters arising? Okay, several. Hold on. Okay, we have a few here, matters arising, so I'm just going to take them in order that I've seen them. Councillor Barr.
Thank you, Chair. Just to say that the plans for Christmas market are going well, Strabane. I've managed to obtain £5,000 of sponsorship locally. I'd like to stress that this sponsorship won't be available this next year when we hope to make the market a standalone event. However, any help from council, practical or otherwise, would be appreciated. Any lights, animation, props, etc., would be well received. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Barr. Stephen's going to come on that.
Yeah, my apologies, Councillor Barr. I meant to come back to you on that. I'll speak to Kevin and come back to you directly on the Christmas markets.
Our next item on the minutes is Councillor Hargan. Yep.
Thank you, Chair. I've got two, so if I can just deal with this one first. It's BC 148, and we looked at the disruption there because of the public realm works, and I'm sure people have seen that traders in Foyle Street are similarly concerned about the disruption that they're facing there. Cool Discs, which is a very popular and long-standing organisation, and where people get local music in particular, have have said that they've lost up to and over 40% of their footfall over the weekends, and that's having a major impact. And they're at the point now where they're worried about what their Christmas business will look like. So I think know that the council and NI Water did an extensive outreach and consultation in the lead-in to this necessary upgrade. But this is also quite worrying, and I think worrying for the traders there on Foyle Street. So I would like to propose that we do a couple of things. One is I think we should meet with the traders and find out what their concerns are and what we can do to help them. And I think we should be looking at obviously rate release from central government and maybe a promotional campaign that reminds people across the district and beyond that these businesses may be behind, that the street might be closed down, but the businesses are very much providing their services. There's a way we could do a positive thing around that would maybe help them. So I think we should certainly write to the finance minister seeking rates relief for the impacted businesses. I'm happy to send that as a proposal if we need to, but I think that this is something that has become clear very recently, Chair, and that explains why I was raising it in such a delayed way today, and I appreciate what you said earlier.
Okay, Councillor Harkin, do you have a seconder for your, seconded by Councillor Farrell. Okay, we'll be seated here. Alderman Hussey.
Good, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Harkin. Members will remember that the issue of rates relief was something that I raised whenever we had NI Water in on this matter. And it surprises me that the businesses themselves have not already applied for rates relief. I don't know if they have, but certainly appreciate the motion, but would encourage the businesses themselves to also apply for the rates relief. It's the norm that happens when disruptive work of this nature takes place elsewhere in Northern Ireland. Thank you.
Councillor Farrell.
Just briefly, Chair. I had raised this at the last meeting about the businesses impacted by DFC's public realm in the walled city. I think the same applies to the businesses impacted by NI Water's work in Foyle Street. So if we can do something as a council corporate to encourage the Department for Finance to provide some sort of mitigation at this moment in time, it would be welcome relief for businesses impacted by this disruption. I don't know if we can do much, but if we can do that, it would be a massive, massive benefit to those traders. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Farrell. Kevin's just going to come in on that.
Yeah, thanks very much for all the contributions. I think that a practical way forward would definitely be to, first of all, make sure that the businesses are aware about the potential for rates relief, how to access that rates relief, what the process is, and we can certainly help with that. That's a pretty practical thing. Also, we're more than happy to facilitate any type of conversation that involves the kind of totality of the various different sort of schemes that are happening, if that is thought to be useful. But I do think the practical side is to engage around the financial circumstances, and I think that members will be aware that we as officers, when we started to look at the totality of the different welcome kind of activities, these are things that need to happen and important for our towns and city centre. We were very keen to make sure that businesses were fully aware of what's coming down the road and potentially to put in their own mitigations too. So we'll do that. we'll do that in between now and the next committee, obviously, because it's a matter of urgency, really, and report back in relation to that, if that's agreeable to all of the members. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Kevin. Sean?
I had a second quick item. Yeah, at the last meeting, I raised the issue of the City of Derry Airport bar restaurant not accepting cash, and I was wondering if there was an update.
Yeah, happy to do that. I contacted the airport and they have contacted their catering provider, Mount Charles. They have provided a response which the airport are not happy with, so they have gone back. They have a potential solution, and they're waiting for Mount Charles to come back again as to whether they'll take up that potential solution or not. So I'll keep you informed and come back to this committee next month.
Thanks for that, Stephen.
Okay, under matters arising, next speaker is Rory.
Thanks, Chair. It's item 142, which was Halloween eating. Halloween is fast approaching, and I had raised at the last meeting about the impact of the public realm behind us. Obviously, people have been waiting a hell of a long time for the public realm, for the shirt factory artwork, but that's going to cause disruption at Halloween. Normally we'd have thousands of people standing out there. It currently can't be accessed because of the construction work. So has there been any feedback from the contractor just to understand, is it going to be ready or can it be used on Halloween night? Thank you.
Yeah, sorry. So just to give you an update on that, the whole site, the work will not be completely finished, but we will be able to, we are going to take back part of the site, which will facilitate the movement of people around the site. So it's an ongoing work in progress, but the contractor is working, constructively with us, and there's ongoing engagement between our capital team and the events team to facilitate that. So it isn't going to be completely finished, so the whole site isn't going to be back. It's not going to look, I suppose, like it usually would on Halloween, but we will be able to accommodate Halloween, and everybody's working constructively to manage it, and we'll have, relevant traffic management and plans in place to be able to facilitate the Halloween festivities.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the next item for the minutes is Alderman Hussey.
Thanks, Chair, for the opportunity. Not a member of committee, but BC 145 Northwest Tourism update. Both myself and Councillor Hart had queried reference to the Appalachian Trail and the working group. Do we know what's happening, or is the trail died out?
The trail is still there, and it's very much still there, and still. I mean, we don't have a big budget to promote it, but we do where we can. It has a Facebook page, and we do promote it where possible. Since the committee, we have reached out to the other council partners who were involved in the original project. So that board was primarily set up to deliver the previous funded project, and we have reached out to them. As you may recall, the chair of that rotated, and the organising of the meeting rotated around various councils. But on the back of our last meeting, we wrote to the other council members primarily. As you might recall, there's a wider membership there, but we focused on the council members with a view to establishing a meeting to determine a direction of travel, I suppose, or how we would move forward with the board. Now, there was some suggestion came back that we may look at widening that to include other trails and maybe have more of a working group with the councils. But so I suppose we're waiting to hear back, and hopefully we'll set up a meeting to discuss how we take that forward. So I will bring back an update in due course once we've heard back from them all.
Through you, Chair. Thanks, Susan. And I hope that we continue to at least recognise the potential of the transatlantic nature of the Appalachian Trail as well. Thank you.
Councillor McKee.
Thank you, Chair.
Just on the same subject, in terms of Appalachian Trail, how do we measure the success of the Appalachian Trail in terms of, people who walk it or utilize it? Because it's not as if they have to, apply for tickets or anything like that. So how do we actually measure the use of it or, the success of it? Thank you.
That is difficult, and it really is. There's some spots. My understanding, I don't know the detail, the ins and outs of each route, but there are some spots on it that have counters for other reasons. And really, it is difficult. It's a matter of that's a piece of work that's difficult. It's similar to other sites that we've talked about here. We now have counters at things like the Sperrin Heritage Centre site for the giants and stuff like that. But it is there's a cost involved in all of those. So it's a lot of it is guesswork, but some of the points along the way do have markers for visitors and are doing surveys. So there is an opportunity to extract some data, but it is likely that is stuff that I suppose the project working group, if it is reconvened, and if the other partners want to reconvene it, would be a matter that would be you discuss there. How are you tracking that data?
Thank you, Councillor McHugh. That concludes the minutes of the previous meeting. We're going to take about 5 minutes, okay? 5 minutes. Get started again. So moving on, our item 8, under open for decision, we're going to have an update on the strategic activities undertaken by the business support team, and that's going to be Kevin.
Thank you, Chair. Members, the purpose of this report is to provide you with an update on the key strategic activities that are currently being undertaken by Council's business support team, and also to seek your endorsement on a range of activities and interventions that are going to be undertaken by the team up to December 2024. Now, it's quite a lengthy report, so I'll just give you some of the highlights, just trusting you've had the opportunity to go through the report. But I suppose just from a general perspective, the business support team are in place, and they to deliver business support to our business community right across the city and the district, specifically around targeting local entrepreneurship and business support. The focus of the activity is around inclusive entrepreneurship, around business advisory and mentoring services, access to funding and financial support, among other initiatives, including more recently and a bigger growing area around sustainability and green business initiatives. So what we've tried to set out in this report is a kind of whistle-stop tour of the various activities, events, initiatives, support programs that are undertaken and have been undertaken across the last period, in particular the stuff that's been funded through the Go Succeed and the UK Shared Prosperity funding, and the various programs that includes. So they target specifically, in addition to just across the general business sector, they specifically are targeting female entrepreneurship, youth entrepreneurship, trying to work at promoting entrepreneurship to minority groups across the district itself. And as you can see within the report, and then people with disabilities. So you can see the amount of sort of events and stuff that are happening or have happened. One of the things we're particularly excited about is the Ultimate Pitch competition, and we want to try and raise the profile of that, which is going to be happening here in the Guildhall on the 22nd of October. And it's sort of like a Dragon's Den type initiative, with the opportunity to get a share of £5,000 investment as part of the Northern Ireland wide final. So the local heat will happen on the 22nd of October. So there's been a good bit of interest in that, and one that we're really excited about. As you can see, the figures, we've tried to capture the figures around the business advisory and mentorship programme across the 3 areas: engage, foundation, growth and scaling. So there's been a significant amount of mentoring hours completed across those 3 sort of cohort areas, and they're delivered by Enterprise Northwest locally, Strabane Enterprise Agency, and other external suppliers, depending on the cohort itself. In terms of the access to funding and finance is a big issue, obviously, for businesses, especially when you're either starting a business or growing a business, and being able to access that, to be able to establish or grow or scale. Again, we're engaging with finance providers to try to raise the profile of the various supports that are out there. The Go Succeed programme, a kind of a new area within which we as a council have got involved in, is around delivery of the grants to businesses, and those are grants from £1,000 up to £4,000. Now they're 100% funded. Really, really useful. And we've been, we would like to say, we're the #1 council in terms of delivery of those grants. The most successful of our companies actually have been the most successful in being able to access those grants, and they're really, really useful. Well, depending on what they want to use that for. So that's been a great success, with 53 entrepreneurs and businesses receiving over £180,000 in grant funding up to date. The Digital Transformation Flexible Fund is one which we do on a Northern Ireland wide basis, and actually is part of the City Deal programme of funding, and you can see the figures that are highlighted there. So again, those are ongoing, and there's another 1.5 years to go on those. We're currently waiting for the DAERA Rural Business Development Grant Scheme to open, And then there are other external loan-based type funding initiatives which we're trying to promote. But I suppose really the key part of this report is around our proposed digital transformation programme, again, off the back of some of the conversations we had earlier in this committee around advanced manufacturing, robotics, around the future of work and that type of thing. Really this programme is around trying to get businesses focused on digital transformation. We understand how competitive it is out there and how innovation's really is the best way to drive growth. Bearing in mind the Minister's priorities around productivity, around net zero, around good jobs and inclusive growth, we feel that this programme fits really, really well with it. So what we want to do is use our allocation of the Northern Entrepreneurship Support pot of just under £19,000 to support 14 businesses for further digital transformation. So that's really the kind of sort of decision that we want members to endorse through the report. The other stuff's ongoing, but quite often I get asked in the committee around progress and stuff, so I thought it was a good opportunity to try to build that into the report. The financials are contained within the report, and the recommendation is that members are asked to note the contents of the report and endorse the delivery of the proposed digital transformation programme. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you for that, Kevin. Our first indicated speaker is Alderman Middleton.
Thank you, Chair, for letting me in, and thank you, Kevin, for the comprehensive report. I don't know if this is a silly question or not, or if I've just missed something, but I just wanted to query why there are no Go Succeed events scheduled in the Faughan ward. Thank you.
I would need to double check on that and come back to you just in terms of the events. I don't know off the top of my head, but it's certainly something I can look at and come back to you individually.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mooney.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to Kevin and for that abridged version, because obviously it's a very detailed report and there's so much in it and so much of positivity. I'm just looking at the agenda here for the digital transformation programme, and it's really been packed since September and onwards anyway, so I'm not going to rehearse what Kevin said, but obviously everybody's had a chance to read it, and I'm happy to note the contents of 5.1 proposed report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Our next indicated speaker is Councillor Hargan.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Kevin, for the report. And I don't think it would be a surprise for me to say that entrepreneurship is probably not the main thing that I focus on as a councillor in terms of my platform. But I wanted to just point out and highlight, I think it's important that there is a lot in the report about assisting people who would face barriers, be they gender, race, or disability, in terms of making sure that they can access the support that would be available to others. And I think that's very, very important that we're doing that, and that it is so clearly included in the report. And then the second thing, I just had a question really, which was, it's one of the bullet points from the report, and this refers to the investment fund for NI. And it says that there is £70 million in new funding available for smaller businesses. And I'm just curious about that because, £25,000 to £2 million is a significant amount of money. If you can access it in terms of a loan, up to £5 million is significant for an equity investment. And so the questions I have would be, are we likely to get a lot of interest in Derry and in the council area for accessing that particular investment? Where does that money come from in terms of the 70 million? For loans, what sort of rates would the loans be set at in terms of interest rates? And if Kevin or Stephen want to say a bit more about the equity investment, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Thanks for raising that in terms of the loans. So in terms of the question around the investment fund, so traditionally it's a bit like a lot of statistics that were raised earlier. the Northern Ireland Small Business Loan Fund, which Invest NI manages, the other like Tech Start funds, Clarendon Capital funds, even the angel funds that have been delivered here over the last, say, 10 years, the take-up hasn't necessarily been as strong as what the fund managers and stuff would have liked. So I think it's really, really welcome that Clarendon are engaging with us as a council. So, for example, myself and the business team are meeting with Clarendon tomorrow to discuss how we can raise the profile of this fund. They're doing an awareness raising session, I think it says in the report, on the 16th of October to try to drum up interest here locally. And I think that that's down to a bit of the kind of the nature of our economy here, you know, in terms of the scale of our SMEs. The majority are micro, and sometimes don't necessarily have the confidence. Maybe they look to this type of initiative. So we'll do our bit to try and raise the profile. I'm not going to go into the terms and conditions of the loans. I probably need to have some kind of, I don't know, finance qualification or whatever to give advice on that. But what I would say is that traditionally they will form part of potentially a cocktail of funding that a business might, well, the business accesses normal bank loans on those terms, that this can maybe support the ability of the business to access the other finance. They will be, the equity side will be around risk and around the ability for the investor to get a return, and it will be on those basis. It's a commercial deal. So not all businesses want to give away equity in their business, so that wouldn't necessarily be their avenue. But if they are willing to do that, I think that the beauty of the Clarendon Fund is that they get the mentors too. So they get, you know, potentially, you know, mentorship with somebody who can help grow that business along the normal route. So we'll find out what it's all about, and we'll do our bit as a council to try to provide that information to the businesses that we think, or that are within our council district, to be able to grow and scale at what we want, and that complements the rest of the stuff we're doing as part of Go Succeed.
Thank you for that, Kevin. Our next indicated speaker is Councillor Hutton.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Kevin, for the very detailed report. I'm loving some of the headings of the initiatives that are going to be taking place, particularly the ones that are acknowledging inclusivity, the programmes aimed at the ethnic minority groups, and the Sisters In event as well. My daughter has recently become a sixth year, and just looking at those types of programmes that are available in the schools are brilliant, because it's providing that extra opportunity if they don't choose the university pathway. So well done. There's a broad reach in relation to all of the programmes. I love the idea of the Dragon's Den one. I love that programme. But no, just to endorse the report and say thank you very much for all your hard work.
Okay, folks, that was the recommendations was to endorse and to take note. So unless I missed it, endorsed by Councillor Hutton and seconded by Councillor Barrell, and then go ahead, Councillor Alderman Hussey.
Thanks, Chair. Just very briefly, whenever Kevin, you're digging out the figures for Faughan, you can include the ones for the Derrick there. I know it says you haven't listed them all there, and I appreciate that, but it'd be interesting to know what's coming down our route. And just, I suppose, on the basis of Stephen's presentation earlier on, how do you see the programme impacting on our area stepping up to its potential with regard to manufacturing in our council area? You know, all the digital stuff and the information stuff and the service stuff, etc. But we have an opportunity there within the manufacturing sector to improve our job provision, etc. So within the Go Succeed, what percentage, shall we say, do you see being orientated to encouraging an expansion of the manufacturing sector?
In terms of the manufacturing, so I will speak about the Digital Transformation Flexible Fund, and the figures that I have are in the latest round of funding, and that's grants of up to £20,000. So we delivered 6 that are going to get their letters of offer now. 4 out of the 6 were manufacturing. So that's brilliant, to be honest. When you look at our economy and the way Stephen presented it, the Go Succeed's more generalist. I don't have the figures, but we can find that out. And because of the scale of it, it's smaller. It's up to £4,000. It generally tends to be more service oriented. IT, ICT, it does tend to be less manufactured because of that. But I can find out the figures. I just don't know them off the top of my head. But in terms of the bigger grants, the manufacturing companies have got those boxed off.
Chair, just a final comment. I appreciate what you're saying about micro businesses, but those micro businesses grow. So the encouragement and the development of them eventually produces results.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Kevin, for that and everybody's comments and questions. Moving on to item 9, it is the delivery of multiple skills initiative, and it's Kevin again.
Thanks, Chair. Members, the purpose of this report is to update you on the Multiply Skills project being delivered by the Derry and Strabane LMP in this financial year, and to seek your approval to appoint people first to deliver the first cohort, which is Integration Through Maths Initiative, and then to seek forward approval on progressing with procurement across the other Multiply Skills initiatives. I suppose that the key headline around this programme is that this is really about trying to address lower levels of adult numeracy across Northern Ireland compared to the UK and the OECD. The project will invest in more new and innovative forms of delivery to extend that provision, the reach of that provision, targeting across Northern Ireland 3,650 people and 1,500 people to achieve a maths qualification. The Derry and Strabane LMP has been allocated £200,000 to deliver on its share of it, and the various cohorts are listed within 2.6 of the report. You can see in 3.1 the 7 specific cohorts that we are targeting, and our share of those figures is to try to get 229 participants within all of those programs to access this support. Again, harken back to the various presentations that were given, certainly from a manufacturing point of view, and that wider economy piece. STEM is hugely important, and if you look at the figures that were quoted earlier around economic inactivity and people with little or no skills, these types of programs are kind of a wee first step in trying to get people the confidence to access higher skilled opportunities from a learning perspective, but then eventually from a career point of view. So you can see the results of the procurement are listed in 3.3. The other cohorts are listed in 3.1, and the financials are detailed within section 5. So the recommendation is to note the contents of the report, approve the appointment of people first to deliver the Integration Through Maths Initiative, and to allow officers to appoint contractors for the remaining 6 initiatives in line with Council's procurement guidelines. Reports will be brought back in line with the scheme of delegation of further committees.
Thank you for that, Kevin. Our first indicated speaker on this item is Alderman Middleton. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, for letting me in. Thanks again, Kevin, for another good report. Just in relation to 4.1, could I please ask that you scope out or maybe send through some information on how this will actually be delivered within the wide rural expanse of the Fáhan? I'm not expecting a big long answer now, but maybe if that could be sent through at some stage, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I have no other indicated speakers. The Councillor Murray.
Thanks, Chair. I was just looking through that report, and I was looking at 2.6, more so engaging mature learners, and then the last one, support that helps children and parents learn numeracy together. And I just thought there last week I could have done that there, because I was sitting down with my young fella trying to learn simultaneous equations, and I was sitting thinking, it's been 33 years I did that there, and I still haven't got a clue, but this paper is just reflective of, I think, a lot of people in society and people my age, and sitting looking at that there going, how maths is so important and how the advantage and benefits that maths can give anybody in an ordinary, especially in an ordinary situation, an ordinary setting. Maths is so important. But we just there and we seem to just, it seems to me that a lot of people look at maths and it's like for, people who are so good at it and that's it. And you just don't, and you isolate it and park it like that there. But as I said, my experience last week was definitely something that paper reflected. And this is this report and outworking to this report can assist so many people in that mature setting and give them another skill set and another advantage in life, So based on the recommendations, Chair, I'm very happy to confirm that report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mooney. So that's a proposal seconded by Councillor Nilis. Okay, moving on to item 10, what is the Peace Plus tender update, and that is going to be Kevin.
Thanks, Chair. Members, this is another procurement type report, and it's the update members on the progress of the Peace Plus procurement plan. Also to inform members of the tender process of the 3 tenders listed in item 1.2. Members are well aware by now around the progress that is being made in terms of the Peace Plus programme itself and the tender and procurement strategy that's underway. There are some details within the report around the progress from a financial perspective within the report in terms of how that's progressing. The Peace team have delivered introductory training to all of the currently contracted projects on the 23rd and 24th of September. The training was well received. We understand how important it is to comply with the guidelines, and so the team are making every effort to ensure that the groups who have won tenders, the organisations that are in delivery mode, are fully aware of what it means to deliver an SUPB funded project. I think that's really, really welcome. So the procurement side of things are listed in item 3.6 and the results 3.6, 3.7 and 3.8. The item or the results of each of those procurements are listed within the report. I'm happy to take any questions on that, but as you can see, the recommendation is that the tenders are awarded as highlighted in item 5.1.
Thank you for that, Kevin. Our first indicated speaker is Councillor Hutton.
Thank you, Chair, and it's just to register my interest as one of the Peace Plus board members. Declare my interest, sorry.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hutton. Councillor Nilis?
Same thing.
Same thing. I'm going to just go through here when you're all pointing your fingers at me. Councillor Hart, Councillor McHugh, Alderman Guy, all members of the Peace Board. We're going to get that noted, okay? Our first indicated speaker on the item. Is this, Councillor Middleton, are you doing the same or are you speaking on the item?
No, just briefly speaking, Chair, thank you.
Okay, over to you.
Thanks, Chair, for allowing me to speak, and thanks again, Kevin, for another report there. Just on behalf of the DUP, I welcome the report and the update on the Peace Plus process. I look forward to seeing the positive impact that this will have on our district and specifically, of course, the Fahan. I'm happy to recommend and endorse the report. Thank you.
Okay, that's been endorsed by Alderman Middleton, seconded by Councillor Mooney. Okay, Councillor Hussey.
Thank you, Chair. Not a member of committee, obviously, but just to welcome the projects, and I think very pleasing element of the tenders that have gone in is the partnerships that have been established, and particularly mindful of the rapid one on the War and Peace project, which I'm particularly looking forward to seeing that on the ground. I know in the recipient communities that the 4 areas there, it's a very welcome one. And as I say, looking forward to seeing that on the ground. And carrying it forward. But as I say, well done to all involved in that. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Alderman Hussey. Moving on, folks, item 11, what is the Labour Market Partnership LMP update? And that'll be Kevin.
Thanks, Chair. Members, the purpose of this report is to provide you an update on progress on the delivery of the 23-24 LMP action plan and to update members on a range of appointments in relation to the delivery of this year's action plan and seek approval to progress on the appointment of further contractors in relation to same, and also to approve the revision of the LMP standing orders as per the audit recommendation from the last internal audit. It was brought up at the last committee just around how we measure success and what the criteria was. So I had asked the team to detail out the various strategic priorities and how that progressed and what way that was measured. So that's contained within 3.1. So depending on the program, there are different metrics included in there in terms of what it is. Whether seeking gaining a qualification, completing a qualification, or gaining new employment, or being in employment after 6 months. So some of the figures are contained within that across the various different programs, and so success often varies depending on the type of program, depending on the participants. Some areas are more challenging than others in relation to the profile of the participants. And so that definitely has an impact in terms of progress right across, and whether someone starts a program and how and whether they complete it. It's definitely it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. I think that's why we do the local labour market partnerships, because it's a a very diverse group of people that we are working with, and really rewarding but diverse nonetheless. So that's contained within the report. Some other information is contained within the report is around the Childminding Academy that'll be being procured and delivered, and that will in itself will hopefully unlock more people into it'll provide employment from a childminding perspective, but it'll also provide an opportunity for more people to get back into the labour market because they've got access now to good quality childminding resources. And so in terms of the procurement, the details of the procurement that has taken place are detailed within item 3.4, 3.4.1 and 3.4.2, and you can see the information contained within the report. I will draw your attention to the internal audit recommendation just around the standing orders of the LMP itself, and the revision of the standing orders that was previously approved, and the revised standing orders. These can be viewed in Appendix 7. So the recommendation is to note the contents of the report and to give approval to the appointment of suppliers highlighted in sections 3.4.1 and 3.4.2, and then to approve the officer team to progress with the procurement of the rest of the programs in the 24-25 action plan, and to approve the revised standing order in Appendix 7.
Okay, thank you for that, Kevin. Councillor Farrell.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Kevin, for the report. I know I had raised it at a previous meeting where you were giving us, well, we're holding this academy and this jobs fair, and I like to see what the outcomes are. So it's good that we have that in black and white. So there's some positivity, the employment academies that were held, there's 92 people gain new employment. There's nearly 150 people get qualifications. So that's really positive and it should be celebrated. So I'm happy to propose this. Happy with progress. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Farrell. Can I have a seconder for this, please? I've no undecounted speakers. Councillor Hutton. Thank you, Kevin. Moving on, folks, our item 12 is the Strabane Town Centre footfall, and that's going to be Kevin.
Thanks, Chair. Members, the purpose of this report is to provide you on provide members with a report on parking management interventions to incentivise shopping and attract footfall to Strabane Town Centre in response to a notice of motion in May 2024. They seek members' approval to introduce 5 free parking days in Strabane Town Centre combined with a marketing campaign. So members are obviously aware of the background to the report. Some local businesses had expressed concern around decreased levels of footfall within the town centre, and officers were asked to look at some of the reasons maybe behind that and carry out a scoping exercise in terms of the parking side of that, and maybe how that connected to that perception. Members are aware of the nature of off-street car parking within Strabane town. So in terms of the tariffs and stuff like that, there are 9 off-street car parks in the town. 5 free of charge car parks providing 413 parking bays, and 4 charge car parks providing 253. The tariff for those is 70p per hour, and they operate between 8:30 and 6:30. So officers have looked at some of the data around car parking in Strabane. So we keep that obviously for off-street car parking where it's charged. We don't necessarily have, scientific data on the free car parking, but we can look at the usage of the charged ones. And we have done a bit of analysis on this. So since the tariff increase was introduced in May 2023, the duration of stay has dropped on average up to 20 minutes. The revenue has obviously increased by over 20%. There was only, and so transactions is probably a better indicator in terms of footfall. There was a very, very small decrease in the number of transactions during this period. So you can see that it's gone from 236,000 to 234,000 in the 23-24. Again, this isn't scientific. This is us looking at it, whatever data is available. The footfall counters that are there in Strabane town haven't seen any drop in terms of the usage or of their usage. In terms of looking at the kind of how the footfall operates within Strabane, it's noted that Friday remains the day of the week with the highest number of transactions and revenue. Not necessarily that surprising, maybe. And then the months with the highest footfall in Strabane are November, December, March, June, and August. That's what we can see from the data that we have been able to glean from what we have. So we looked at a number of potential mitigations that you could look at in terms of if you want to try to boost the profile of certainly from a car parking perspective anyway. We looked at what the implications would be to lower tariffs, and you can see within the report that if you were to revert down to 50p an hour, there's a potential loss of impact or of revenue around £44,000, which is significant per annum. If you dropped it by 10p, there's about £36,000 of an impact there. Obviously, those types of decisions would maybe need to form part of our rates estimates process because they have a bigger knock-on impact. We looked at the cost of trying to incentivise free parking on specific days around, specific times, and we looked at offering 5 days throughout the year where you would have free parking. And based on what we know from, say, the end of November and December last year, there's a cost of around 3,650, we think, to do that. Obviously, you'd want to promote that, so you could maybe look at putting some budget towards some sort of marketing campaign and working with the bid to maybe try and promote that. So there's a contribution of £5,000 there. We were also asked to look at that part 5 around the first hour free. Now, the challenge with that, first of all, from an operational point of view, we can't actually do that because of the way the ticketing system operates and how our enforcement works. But if you look at the usage figures, we've estimated that would result potentially in about £70,000 of a revenue loss. A huge proportion of our users park, 1 hour or less. So you'd be maybe taking out a lot of those users if you were even able to do that operationally. So we feel that, there certainly is merit in looking at option 3. look at the busiest trading days within the UK and Ireland. These are traditionally the 5 Saturdays leading up to Christmas. The free parking days would obviously provide an additional incentive to visit the town centre. A big push is to try to rebalance the kind of parking from the retail park back into the town. We can design a campaign around the Christmas lights, around the Strabane gift card, and around the Christmas market that Councillor Barr has been chatting about, and package it together as a really attractive offering. So I suppose the recommendation, so there's a £5,000 cost to that, to do that, and the cost can be met within the existing business budget. So the recommendation is members are asked to note the contents of the report, and obviously a recommendation to look at this 5 free parking days in Strabane Town Centre to increase footfall, to supported by a dedicated marketing campaign. And what I should say is that I think it would be important to then look at the data after to see did it raise, because we still will be able to measure this, did it have the potential to raise footfall, or was it not necessarily to do with car parking at all? So I think there's an opportunity to really learn from this. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you for that, Kevin. Councillor Hart.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Kevin, for the report, and I'm happy to propose the recommendations. This was a motion brought by Councillor Paul Boggs on behalf of Sinn Féin in relation to car parking and footfall in Strabane Town. As I say, I'm delighted to support the recommendations for 5 free car parking for Christmas shopping days, and a bit to encourage people to shop local and support small businesses. I welcome the work that was undertaken by council officers to explore opportunities for initiatives that would encourage more people into our town centres. We have listened to local business owners who have raised concerns about reduced footfall in Strabane Town Centre, and we are committed to doing what we can to support businesses and help our local independent retailers thrive. This will give Christmas shoppers the opportunity to avail of free car parking for 5 designated Saturdays in the lead up to Christmas. This is the busiest time of the year for local independent retailers, and I hope that people will avail of the 5 days of free parking, come into the town centre and enjoy what small businesses have to offer. So thanks again.
Thank you, Councillor Hart. Proposed there by yourself. Can I have a seconder, please? Seconded by Councillor Farrell. Moving on to item number 13, what is a request to change the November meeting of the Business and Culture Committee?
So proposed, Chair. I think it's straightforward enough.
That's what I'd like to hear. So items 14 and 15 are open for information. I'm happy to keep them at that unless you say otherwise. So I see no hands raised for either 13 or 14. So we're going to take them as they are. We're just going to go into confidential now, just wait for a confirmation.